Close your eyes for a moment and imagine true darkness. Not the darkness of your bedroom with streetlights filtering through curtains. Not the darkness of a power outage with your phone glowing nearby. True darkness. The darkness your ancestors lived in every single night for 2 million years before they learned to control fire. 2 million years. That is how long our lineage existed before fire became a reliable companion. 2 million years of nights without light. 2 million years of cold without warmth. 2 million years of raw food and constant vigilance. And somehow they survived. Somehow they thrived well enough to eventually become us. If you are settling in for the night, this is perfect company. The story of how your ancestors faced the darkness. How they survived without the technology we take most for granted. How they made it through millions of nights so that eventually you could exist. Subscribe and stick around. Let's start with what fire actually gave us, so we can understand what its absence meant. Fire provides light, extending the useful hours of the day. Fire provides warmth, allowing survival in cold environments. Fire provides protection, keeping predators at bay. Fire provides cooking, making food safer and more nutritious. Without fire, our ancestors had none of these advantages. The earliest members of our genus, Homo habilis, emerged around 2.4 million years ago. They had larger brains than Australopithecines. They made stone tools, but they almost certainly didn't control fire. The evidence for controlled fire doesn't appear reliably until about 1 million years ago. Maybe earlier in scattered instances. That means at least 1.4 million years of human existence without fire, possibly longer. 1.4 million years of facing the night without light, of enduring cold without warmth, of eating everything raw. It is almost impossible for us to imagine. So how did they do it? How did our ancestors survive the darkness? The answer involves a combination of strategies that we can reconstruct from anatomy, behavior patterns in other primates, archaeological evidence, and logical inference from the challenges they faced. First and most importantly, they probably slept in trees. Or at least, they retreated to elevated positions as darkness fell. Leopards and other nocturnal predators are deadly on the ground. But climbing requires light and time. A human in a tree is much safer than a human on the savanna floor. The anatomy of early Homo species supports this. They retained curved fingers and relatively long arms compared to modern humans, features that would have made climbing easier. We think of bipedalism as the defining human trait, but our ancestors didn't abandon the trees entirely. The trees were their nighttime refuge. Chimpanzees build sleeping nests in trees every night. They bend branches together to create platforms, sometimes adding leaves for comfort. Our ancestors probably did something similar. Every evening as the sun set, they would have climbed to relative safety and constructed their beds for the night. Imagine that routine every single day ending the same way. The anxiety as light fades, the climb to the sleeping tree, the construction of the nest, the long hours of darkness, listening for sounds below. Every night for your entire life. Every night for millions of years. But trees weren't perfect protection. Leopards can climb. Snakes hunt at night. Falling from a nest during sleep could be fatal. Our ancestors weren't safe in the trees. They were just safer than they would have been on the ground. This is where group living became essential. Sleeping in groups meant more eyes and ears, even during sleep. If one individual noticed a threat, they could alert the others. The noise of a group might itself deter some predators. Safety in numbers, even in the trees. The sleep patterns of our ancestors were probably different from ours. Modern humans typically sleep in one consolidated block, but without fire's protection, our ancestors might have slept more lightly, more intermittently, waking frequently to scan for danger, never falling into the deep, vulnerable sleep we enjoy. Some researchers believe that the human capacity for consolidated sleep only evolved after fire provided enough protection. Before fire, chronic light sleep and frequent waking might have been the norm. The deep sleep you'll hopefully enjoy tonight is a luxury made possible by technology. The nights were dangerous, but the days brought their own challenges. Without fire, food had to be eaten raw. And raw food, particularly raw meat, presents problems that cooked food doesn't: parasites, bacteria, tough textures that are hard to chew and digest. Our ancestors had larger teeth and stronger jaws than we do. They needed them. Chewing raw food requires more mechanical force than chewing cooked food. The reduction in human tooth size over the last million years tracks closely with the spread of cooking. The digestive system also had to work harder. Raw food is less digestible than cooked food. Our ancestors had to eat more to get the same calories. They had to spend more time chewing, more time digesting, more energy extracted just to break down what they consumed. This creates an interesting puzzle. Large brains require lots of energy. About 20% of our calories go to running our brains. But raw food provides less available energy per pound. How did our ancestors afford their expanding brains before cooking made more calories available? The answer probably involves meat. Raw meat, while dangerous, is more calorie-dense than raw plants. As our ancestors became more effective hunters and scavengers, they could access the calories needed for brain growth. Even without cooking, meat eating preceded cooking and helped make it possible. But eating raw meat carried risks. Parasites that cooking would kill, bacteria that heat would destroy. Our ancestors must have had immune systems robust enough to handle these threats, or at least robust enough that enough individuals survived to reproduce. Some of those immune adaptations might still be with us. Our bodies can handle raw meat better than you might think, though cooking still makes it much safer. The genetic legacy of 2 million years of raw eating persists in modern immune function. If you are still with me, consider the cold. Without fire, our ancestors had no way to generate warmth beyond their own bodies. In tropical Africa, this wasn't always a problem, but nights can be cold even in the tropics, and expanding into new environments was limited by temperature. Huddling was the primary solution. Groups sleeping close together, sharing body heat. This reinforced social bonds. The individuals you huddled with at night were the ones keeping you alive. Physical closeness as survival strategy and social glue. Hair loss is a puzzle in this context. Modern humans are nearly hairless compared to other apes. When did we lose our fur? If it happened before fire control, how did our ancestors stay warm? The timing of hair loss is debated, but it creates challenges for the pre-fire period. One theory suggests that hair loss happened for daytime thermoregulation, to help with cooling during active hunting in hot conditions. The cost of cold nights was paid for by the benefit of cool days. Our ancestors traded nighttime discomfort for daytime efficiency. Another possibility is that hair loss happened gradually, with fire control compensating as fur disappeared. The two changes might have been interlinked, each enabling the other. We don't know for certain. The evidence is fragmentary. What we do know is that without fire, geographic expansion was limited. Cold environments were essentially off-limits. Our ancestors were confined to tropical and subtropical regions until fire gave them the ability to survive elsewhere. Homo erectus, who emerged around 2 million years ago, eventually spread across Africa and into Asia. But the earliest expansions were into warm regions. The colonization of cold environments came later, likely after fire control was established. The night held terrors beyond predators, and cold, darkness limited activity. Without light, our ancestors couldn't do much after sunset. No tool making, no foraging, no traveling. The productive day ended when the sun went down. This means our ancestors lived with about 12 hours of useful daylight, varying with latitude and season, 12 hours to find food, make tools, travel, socialize, and handle all the business of survival. Then darkness and waiting for dawn. Fire would eventually extend the day, allow tool making after dark, enable socializing around the flames, create time for activities that didn't depend on foraging. Some researchers believe this extended day was crucial for cultural development. But before fire, there was only the waiting, the long hours of darkness where nothing could happen except rest and vigilance. Hours that modern humans have almost forgotten how to experience. When did you last spend 12 hours in darkness doing nothing? The social dynamics of pre-fire groups must have been intense. With limited daylight hours, social interactions were compressed. Alliances had to be maintained quickly. Conflicts had to be resolved before nightfall. The group you went to sleep with was your survival unit. Grooming, which is how primates maintain social bonds, probably occupied significant time. Chimpanzees spend hours grooming each other. Our ancestors likely did too. Physical touch as social currency, building the relationships that would matter when darkness fell. Some researchers theorize that language evolved partly to replace grooming. You can only groom one individual at a time, but you can talk to several at once. Language as more efficient social bonding, freeing time for other activities. But complex language probably came later. After fire, before fire, communication was probably simpler. Calls and gestures and facial expressions, enough to coordinate activities and maintain relationships, but not the elaborate language we use today. The vulnerability of children in the pre-fire world was extreme. Human infants are helpless for years. They can't climb trees effectively. They can't run from predators. They're completely dependent on adults for survival, especially during the dangerous night hours. This means childcare had to be a group effort. Mothers alone couldn't protect their children through the night, while also sleeping and staying alert. Extended family and group members must have shared the burden. Cooperative breeding as survival strategy. The grandmother hypothesis suggests that post-reproductive females contributed significantly to child survival. Grandmothers who helped care for grandchildren increased those children's chances of survival, and thus their own genetic legacy. Grandparenting as evolutionary adaptation. Every morning must have been a relief. Surviving another night. Making it through the darkness one more time. The sunrise not just bringing light, but bringing safety, productivity, the possibility of another day of life. Think about how that would shape psychology. The association of darkness with danger, light with safety. These associations persist today. Even though we've conquered the night, fear of the dark is nearly universal in human children, an echo of millions of years when darkness meant death. The monsters we imagine in childhood darkness aren't random. They're leopards and hyenas and snakes, transformed by imagination. The fears that kept our ancestors alive, persisting in children who face no such threats. Evolution's memory, encoded in our psychology. And then, eventually, fire changed everything. The exact timing is debated. Some sites show possible fire use as early as 1.5 million years ago. Reliable, widespread fire control probably came later, around 1 million years ago or even more recently. The transition wasn't instant. Fire control was probably sporadic at first. Opportunistic use of natural fires, gradual learning of how to maintain flames, slow spread of knowledge between groups. The conquest of darkness took time, but once fire was established, nothing was the same. The night became social time instead of fearful waiting. The diet could include cooked food, safer and more nutritious. Cold environments opened up for colonization. The human world expanded. The 2 million years before fire weren't a prelude to human history. They were human history, millions of years of survival and adaptation that shaped who we are. The struggle against darkness formed us as much as anything that came after. Your fear of the dark comes from those years. Your love of warm food comes from finally getting it. Your comfort in social groups at night comes from needing them for survival. The pre-fire era lives on in your psychology and your preferences. If you are drifting off now, consider what tonight would be like without your lights, your heat, your locked doors and walls. Consider the darkness your ancestors faced every single night for 2 million years. And consider that you are here because they made it through. They didn't have science to tell them why they feared the dark. They just feared it. And that fear kept them alive. They didn't understand predator behavior or germ theory. They just followed instincts honed over millions of years of evolution. And those instincts were good enough. Good enough that some of them survived every night. Good enough that they reproduced and raised children who survived their own nights. Good enough that the lineage continued, generation after generation, until eventually fire changed everything. The invention of fire control is sometimes called humanity's first great invention. But it is more accurate to say it was the invention that made all other inventions possible. Without fire, there is no metallurgy, no chemistry, no cooking. Without fire, we're still in the trees at night, and yet our ancestors survived without it for so long. That survival is an achievement in itself. 2 million years of making it work without fire's advantages. 2 million years of adapting and coping and finding ways to get through the night. Rest now in the safety fire gave us, in the warmth your ancestors longed for, in the light that extends your day and pushes back the darkness. You are enjoying the fruits of the greatest invention in human history. But remember the darkness too. Remember what your ancestors faced. Remember that the comfort you feel tonight was earned over millions of years of struggle. The ease of modern life rests on ancient suffering. Tomorrow night, you'll turn on lights without thinking. You'll eat cooked food without gratitude. You'll sleep in warmth without awareness of what it means. That is fine. That is normal. But sometimes it is worth remembering. 2 million years in the dark. Your ancestors made it through. They survived every night so that eventually one of their descendants could lie in comfort and listen to a story about how hard it used to be. That descendant is you, here, now, tonight, safe and warm, and probably not thinking about leopards in the darkness. The struggle is over for you. The darkness has been conquered, at least for now. Thanks for spending this time exploring the world before fire. The darkness our ancestors faced, the strategies they used to survive, the long, long wait until someone figured out how to make light in the night. Subscribe and stick around for more journeys into the forgotten eras of human existence. More stories of survival against odds. More appreciation for how far we've come from the darkness. Sleep well tonight. Sleep deep, in the way your ancestors couldn't. Let the light they never had watch over your door. Let the warmth they craved wrap around you. You've inherited what they struggled for. Good night from the era before fire. From the 2 million years of darkness. From every ancestor who climbed a tree at sunset and wondered if they'd see the sun rise again. They saw enough sunrises. The lineage continued. And now here you are, lying in light and warmth, ready for sleep that would have been impossibly deep and safe for any of them. Before fire. After fire, 2 different worlds. You live in the second one. But the first one made you what you are. Good night. But before you drift away completely, consider one more dimension of the pre-fire world. The world without fire was a world without many things we associate with humanity. No cooking means no shared meals in the way we know them. No fire means no hearth, no home in the modern sense. The concept of home might not have existed. A home requires a fixed place that you return to, a place made distinct by human presence. Fire created that distinctness. The fire pit became the center of the home. Before fire, there were just sleeping trees and foraging ranges. This has implications for how our ancestors thought about space and belonging. Without a home to return to, attachment to place would have been different. Territorial, perhaps, but not domestic. The domestic sphere is a fire-lit innovation. Storytelling, which might be the foundation of human culture, probably developed around fires. The extended evening hours that fire created, the social gathering that flames encouraged, the light that allowed faces to be seen while speaking, all of these enabled the story. Before fire, stories would have been limited to daylight hours, competing with other activities for time and attention. Without the dedicated social time that fire created, cultural transmission would have been harder. Culture itself might have been simpler. Religion, too, might owe something to fire. The contemplative time around flames, the mysterious dancing light, the transformation of material by heat. Fire invites wonder in ways that raw nature doesn't. The sacred might have first been felt in fire's presence. But these developments came later. In the 2 million years before fire, our ancestors lived without hearth, without home, without evening stories, without whatever proto-religious feelings fire might inspire. A simpler existence in some ways, a harder one in others. They had each other. That much is clear. The social bonds that kept them alive in the darkness, the relationships that determined who you huddled with, who watched while you slept, who would raise your children if you died. Society preceded fire. Maybe that is the most important lesson. Humanity isn't defined by technology, not even by fire. It is defined by our relationships, by our capacity to cooperate, by our willingness to help each other survive. Those qualities evolved before fire and made fire's benefits shareable. The pre-fire era wasn't a lesser time. It was a different time. Our ancestors weren't failed humans waiting for fire to make them complete. They were complete in their own way, adapted to their own circumstances, living fully human lives without what we consider essential. That is worth remembering when we think about what makes us human. Not our technology, not our control of nature, but our connection to each other. The relationships that preceded and enabled everything else. Tonight, you'll sleep in the glow of 2 million years of survival, in the warmth that fire finally brought, in the safety that human cooperation created long before flames ever lit the darkness. The ancestors made it through the dark together, and together, eventually, they conquered it. Not alone. Never alone. Humanity's survival has always been a group project. You are part of that group tonight, part of the ongoing project of human survival. Resting now so you can contribute tomorrow, sleeping in safety that millions of ancestors helped create 2 million years before fire. Millions of nights survived. Countless individuals who faced the darkness and made it to dawn. Their success is your existence. Honor them by resting well, by sleeping the deep sleep they couldn't, by enjoying the safety they fought for. You've inherited their victory over the night. Before fire, the era that made us, the darkness that shaped us, the survival that proved what humans could endure, all of it leading to this moment, this night, this rest. Thanks for this journey through the dark ages of humanity, through the millions of years without fire's comfort, through the world our ancestors survived, so that eventually we could exist. Subscribe and stick around for more explorations of the forgotten eras, more stories of what humans endured, more appreciation for the long road that led to now. Sleep now, sleep well, sleep safe, sleep warm, all the things your ancestors couldn't do, at least not fully, the gifts of fire and time and survival. Good night, from before fire, from the darkness that shaped us, from every ancestor who made it through another night, so that eventually you could rest in peace. The night was long, but they made it. And now, so can you. Good night. Actually, There is more to explore about the pre-fire world before sleep takes you. Consider the sensory world our ancestors inhabited. Without fire's light, the night belonged to sound and smell. Senses we've largely abandoned ruled the darkness. Our ancestors developed acute hearing. The crack of a twig in the darkness, the rustle of grass that might be wind or might be a predator stalking. Every sound carried meaning. Silence itself was information, sometimes more frightening than noise. Smell, too, would have been crucial. The scent of a predator on the wind, the smell of rain approaching, the odor of rotting food that shouldn't be eaten. Humans today have relatively weak senses of smell compared to other mammals. It might have been different before fire reduced our need for it. The night sounds of Africa would have been the soundtrack of our ancestors' evenings. Hyenas calling, lions roaring in the distance, insects chirping, each sound identified, evaluated, either dismissed or acted upon. An auditory vigilance that never fully relaxed. Modern humans often find complete silence disturbing. We've evolved to monitor our environment through sound. When there is no sound, something might be wrong. A predator might have silenced everything. The absence of noise can trigger anxiety older than consciousness. The moon would have been more important than we can easily imagine. Moonlit nights were safer nights. Our ancestors could see threats approaching, could navigate if they needed to move. The lunar cycle would have organized life in ways we've forgotten. New moon nights were the most dangerous. Total darkness except for stars. Maximum vulnerability. Our ancestors probably avoided travel and stayed close to their sleeping trees on these nights. The fear of moonless darkness might persist in our psychology. Full moon nights offered opportunity. More visibility meant more safety. Perhaps some activities could extend into the evening. Perhaps social bonds could be maintained through the night. The full moon as a gift in the pre-fire world. Some researchers have suggested that human menstrual cycles, which average about 29 days, might have originally synchronized with lunar cycles. The moon governing both light and fertility. Evidence is debated, but the possibility is intriguing. The stars would have been overwhelming. Without any light pollution, our ancestors saw the Milky Way in full glory every clear night. More stars than any modern city dweller has ever seen. A sky crowded with lights that meant nothing yet. Did they wonder about the stars? Did they make up stories about them? We can't know, but the capacity for wonder seems ancient. The ability to look up and feel something, the experience of awe at the vast and incomprehensible. This might predate language. The experience of weather without shelter was also different. Rain soaking through the night, cold wind without walls to block it, heat without shade to escape to. Our ancestors were exposed to the elements in ways we've engineered ourselves away from. Rainy nights would have been miserable, cold and wet, with no way to dry off. Sleep nearly impossible, just enduring until dawn. Some nights weren't about rest at all. They were about survival through conditions that would seem unbearable to modern humans. And yet, our ancestors adapted. Bodies that could tolerate what we'd consider hypothermia. Metabolisms that could maintain core temperature through cold nights. Skin that could dry eventually. physical resilience beyond what modern humans typically possess. We've become fragile in our comfort. Central heating and air conditioning have reduced our tolerance for temperature variation. Soft beds have made us intolerant of hard ground. We've traded resilience for convenience, a deal that most of us would make again. But somewhere in your body, the old adaptations remain. Dormant capacities for endurance that you'll probably never need. The ability to survive conditions that would merely inconvenience your ancestors. Evolution prepared you for a world you'll never face. The social structure of pre-fire groups was probably more intimate than anything we experience today. In the absence of fire's light, touch became the primary social sense after dark. Physical closeness, not as choice, but as necessity. This constant touch would have maintained social bonds in ways we've lost. Modern humans can go days without meaningful physical contact with others. Our ancestors touched constantly, huddled together through every night. Loneliness might not have been possible in the same way. The group would have known each other's bodies intimately. The way someone breathed while sleeping, the muscle tension that signaled waking, the subtle movements that indicated distress or comfort, reading bodies in the dark. Trust had to be complete. You were most vulnerable while sleeping. The people around you could harm you if they chose. Sleeping among others required confidence that they wouldn't. That kind of trust builds slowly and means everything. Betrayal of that trust would have been catastrophic. Exile from the group meant almost certain death. Without the protection of others, a solitary human wouldn't last long. The social contract wasn't a metaphor. It was survival itself. This might explain some of our deepest social instincts. The fear of exclusion, the need to belong, the discomfort of social rejection. These feelings seem exaggerated in modern contexts where exclusion isn't lethal, but they evolved when it was. The hierarchy within groups would have been clear. Who slept in the safest positions? Who got the best spots on cold nights? Who was trusted to keep watch while others slept? Status determined survival, literally. Infants and children would have needed protected positions surrounded by adults, kept warm by bodies on all sides. The most vulnerable members at the center of the sleeping group, a human arrangement that predates conscious planning. Mothers and children probably slept in closest contact. The bond maintained through the night, infants nursing on demand, as they still do in many traditional societies. The mother-child dyad as the core of the sleeping group. Older children would have gradually moved to the periphery, taking on more responsibility for vigilance, learning the skills of night survival. The transition from protected child to protecting adult. Young adults probably took the most exposed positions, strong enough to defend if needed, quick enough to raise the alarm, not yet important enough for protected central positions. Youth as a time of risk and contribution. Elderly individuals who couldn't contribute to defense still had value. Their knowledge, their social connections, their role in childcare during the day. But their position in the sleeping group might have been less secure as they weakened. This is speculation, of course. We can't know exactly how pre-fire groups organized their nights, but the logic of vulnerability and protection suggests something like these patterns. The archaeology of sleep positions hasn't been well preserved. What we can say is that the nights shaped social structure, who you trusted, who you depended on, who you would die to protect. These relationships were forged in darkness and tested every single night. The coming of fire changed these dynamics profoundly. Light allowed visual social interaction after dark. Heat reduced the need for huddling. Safety reduced the stakes of sleeping positions. The intimate touch-based society of darkness evolved into something else. Some researchers mourn this loss. The constant touch, the forced intimacy, the social bonds maintained through physical closeness rather than visual display. We gained so much with fire, we also lost something. Modern loneliness might be a fire-enabled condition. When you don't need others for warmth and safety, you can choose isolation. Our ancestors couldn't make that choice. Solitude would have felt like a death sentence, not a lifestyle. Tonight, you can sleep alone if you want, in your own room, in your own bed, surrounded by walls and locks and lights you can control, a luxury so profound that your ancestors couldn't have imagined it. And yet, many people find sleeping alone difficult, feel something missing without another body nearby, wake in the night with nameless anxiety, the ghost of 2 million years of group sleeping persisting in modern psychology. If you share a bed tonight, you are doing something ancient, something that predates fire by millions of years, something that connected our ancestors to each other through every dark night they survived. If you sleep alone, you are doing something new, an experiment that would have seemed insane to any of your ancestors, a declaration of independence from the group that would have meant death in the pre-fire world. Either way, you are safe tonight. The dangers that made group sleeping essential no longer stalk your bedroom. The fire that changed everything burns in power plants now, converted to the electricity that lights your world. 2 million years in the dark. Generations beyond counting who never knew any other way, who couldn't imagine the lights you take for granted, who would have thought you were a god for the control you have over darkness. You are not a god, just an inheritor, a beneficiary of the long struggle against darkness that eventually produced fire and everything after. You didn't earn this comfort. You were born into it. That is fine. That is how inheritance works. The struggles of ancestors become the benefits of descendants. The suffering of the past becomes the ease of the present. It is not fair. It is just true. What you do with the inheritance is up to you. How you use the time that fire brought. How you honor or forget the darkness that shaped you. Whether you pass on something better to those who come after. Rest now. The long night of human prehistory is over. The darkness that reigned for 2 million years has been pushed back. You can sleep deep and safe in ways your ancestors never could. Tomorrow, you'll turn on lights without thinking about the fire they descend from. You'll eat cooked food without considering what raw eating meant. You'll take warmth for granted. That is normal. That is fine. But tonight, for these few minutes before sleep, you've remembered. You've thought about the darkness. You've considered what your ancestors faced. And maybe that changes something, even if you can't say what. Thanks for this journey into the world before fire. into the 2 million years of darkness, into the survival strategies that kept your lineage alive long enough to eventually discover light. Subscribe and stick around for more explorations of forgotten eras, more stories from the deep human past, more appreciation for the long road that brought us here. Sleep well tonight. Sleep in the light your ancestors earned. Sleep safe in the warmth they dreamed of. Sleep deep in the protection their struggles created. Good night from before fire, from the darkness that shaped us, from every night survived so that this night could happen. Before fire. After fire, the divide that made us human. Rest now on the safe side of that divide. Good night. One more thought before you drift away. The pre-fire era taught our ancestors something profound about cooperation that still echoes in human nature. They learned that survival depends on others, that no individual can make it alone, that the group is stronger than any member. This lesson was reinforced every single night. Every night spent in the vulnerable darkness. Every night survived because others kept watch. Every night when the warmth of other bodies meant the difference between sleeping and shivering. Modern life has obscured this lesson. We can survive alone now, at least technically. We have doors that lock and police to call and hospitals to treat us. The individual seems sufficient, but something in us knows this is an illusion. When disasters strike, we revert to ancient patterns. Neighbors helping neighbors, strangers becoming allies. The community pulling together in ways that seem surprising, but are actually deeply natural. The pre-fire cooperation instinct surfacing when needed. The loneliness epidemic of modern life might be a symptom of violating our evolved nature. We're built for constant social contact, for bodies nearby at night, for touch and presence and the security of the group. When we isolate ourselves, something ancient protests. This doesn't mean we should abandon modern conveniences and sleep in piles again, but it might mean recognizing what we've lost and finding ways to compensate, building community deliberately when it no longer forms automatically. The pre-fire world also taught our ancestors about time differently than we experience it. Without ways to extend the day, they lived strictly by the sun's schedule. Dawn meant action, dusk meant stopping. The rhythm was absolute. Modern humans have lost this rhythm almost entirely. Electric lights let us work any hour. Shift work disrupts circadian patterns. We can choose when to sleep and wake, but our bodies still expect the ancient rhythm, and they rebel when we violate it. Sleep disorders affect huge portions of the population. Insomnia, circadian rhythm disorders, sleep that doesn't refresh. These might be partly the result of living against our evolutionary programming. Bodies built for fire, less nights, forced into electric days. The solution isn't to abandon electricity, but it might involve respecting the biological clocks that evolved over 2 million years. Dimming lights as evening comes, avoiding screens before sleep, creating artificial dusks in a world of artificial day. Your body remembers the pre-fire world even if your mind doesn't. The melatonin that rises when darkness falls, the cortisol that drops as you rest, the sleep architecture that cycles through stages refined over millions of years, ancient programming running on modern hardware. Tonight, as you fall asleep, those ancient programs will run. Your brain will cycle through stages of sleep that your ancestors experienced in trees and on the ground. The same neural patterns, the same hormonal rhythms playing out in your very different environment. That is remarkable if you think about it. 2 million years of evolution running inside you right now. The accumulated wisdom of countless generations of sleepers. All of it devoted to getting you safely through the night, even though the dangers it evolved for no longer exist. Your dreams will probably feature ancient elements. Falling, being chased, social evaluation, themes that mattered intensely in the pre-fire world. The dreaming brain is a museum of ancestral concerns, even when it processes modern experiences. Nightmares might be preparation. The brain rehearsing threats so you'll respond correctly if they occur. A system that made sense when predators hunted the darkness, less necessary now, but still running, still preparing you for a world that no longer exists. The child who fears monsters in the closet is responding to real evolutionary programming. The adult who checks the locks before bed is doing the same thing, dressed in modern clothes. We're all still preparing for the nights our ancestors actually faced. The pre-fire world also lacked something we rarely think about. Privacy in the constant closeness of group sleeping. There was no privacy at all. Every bodily function witnessed, every emotion visible, every relationship public. Privacy is a fire-enabled luxury. Modern humans crave privacy in ways that would have seemed insane to our ancestors. Separate bedrooms, closed doors, the ability to be unseen and unwatched. We've created these spaces because fire made them possible. And we've discovered we like them. But the craving for privacy coexists with a fear of loneliness. We want to be alone, but not too alone. We want doors we can close, but also doors we can open. The tension between solitude and connection might be a fire-created problem. Our brains haven't fully solved. Maybe that is one of the prices of progress. New problems that didn't exist before. New tensions that have no evolutionary solution. The pre-fire world had different problems, but they were problems our ancestors were adapted for. Modern problems are often mismatches. Still, most of us wouldn't trade back. The comfort and safety and possibility of the post-fire world are worth the new problems it creates. We can work on solving those problems. We couldn't have solved the problems of constant danger and darkness. The 2 million years before fire were not a golden age. They were a long struggle against conditions that would break most modern humans. The romanticization of prehistoric life ignores the suffering that was constant background noise. But neither were they a dark age in the sense of being without value. Our ancestors lived fully human lives. They loved and feared and hoped and mourned. They raised children and cared for elderly. They were us, just in harder circumstances. Honoring them means neither romanticizing nor dismissing their experience. It means recognizing that they faced real challenges with real courage, that they survived against odds we can barely imagine, that we owe them our existence. Every comfort you enjoy tonight was earned by their struggle. Every light that burns descends from their eventual discovery. Every wall that protects you is an elaboration of the fire circles that first pushed back the darkness. You are the current end of a very long chain. a chain of survival stretching back 2 million years and more. A chain of nights survived, one after another, through all the darkness before fire was tamed. That chain continues through you, to your children or the children you influence, to the future generations who will inherit whatever you contribute. The chain doesn't end with you unless you are the last of your line. Rest now as part of that chain, a link between ancestors and descendants, a current holder of a legacy stretching back to the first humans and forward to whoever comes after. The darkness outside your window tonight is tamed. Traffic lights and street lights and the glow of a city that never fully sleeps. But inside that tamed darkness, ancient fears still flicker. Ancient instincts still activate. Ancient programs still run. That is okay. That is human. We carry the past whether we want to or not. The pre-fire world lives in us in ways we mostly don't notice, in fears and desires and patterns that make sense only in evolutionary context. Sleep well with your ancestors tonight. Let them keep watch in your dreams. Let the vigilance they developed rest, because it is no longer needed. Let 2 million years of survival instinct finally fully relax. Before fire, the era that made us human in a different sense. The crucible that forged the cooperation and vigilance and resilience that would later make fire possible. Without the pre-fire era, there would be no fire era. Thanks for this final reflection on the dark years, on the millions of nights that came before fire changed everything, on the survival that made your existence possible. Good night from the darkness before fire, from every ancestor who faced it and survived, from the long chain of nights that led to this one. They made it through. So can you. Good night.